Hello everyone, this is going to be another one of my periodic attempts to put my thoughts into words, and what I wanted to talk about today is the damage that digital technology and the internet are doing to our mental health. It's going to be a kind of long rambling discussion. I find it completely impossible to script these things and put my thoughts down on paper. They don't seem to proceed in a kind of linear fashion. So what I'm probably going to have to do is just express my thoughts, and there's going to be some long pauses in between. So I'll try and edit this video to shorten it as much as possible, and to cut out all the moments of silence. So at the moment you're looking at a print on my wall. There's not going to be a lot of visual material in this video, so you're probably going to be looking at this for most of the video. I'll explain a lot more about why I'm showing you this later in the discussion, but it's basically a print that I purchased a long time ago now, late 1970s, maybe early 1980s, and it's of a Russian hussar, and I had it rolled up for quite a long time. But finally decided it would be worth putting on my wall. At the time I was living in a bedsit in Ramsgate, and I went to a local firm and they framed it for me, and I was really pleased with the result. Their framing really kind of enhanced it, and it's been, wherever I've lived, I've had it on my wall ever since. But that's by the by. So there's been a couple of things happened recently, particularly experiences on YouTube that have kind of provoked this, and some of them have been a little bit kind of, I would say, disturbing. Now, I'm often criticised in comments for straying from the subject of wargaming, and I make no excuses whatsoever for doing that. I'm not a wargaming channel, as I constantly have to repeat, but nevertheless people feel free to criticise any content that I put up that doesn't relate to wargaming. My channel is a history about any subjects that relate to the past, and as the past has a very strong bearing on the present, I talk about just about anything that I feel I have a view and I want to express that view. So even when I stick to subjects that are kind of more closely connected to military matters and wargaming, I still feel, and sometimes I don't feel it, I observe it quite accurately, that there is a lot of comment on my videos that is pursuing a different agenda other than a straightforward interest in wargaming. So it's impossible for me to avoid contentious issues, shall we say, and I can't get away with it, regardless of whether I stay mute on the subject myself. The comments kind of introduce other people's opinions, and I don't see why I should allow my channel to be a platform for other people's views and not be able to express my own. So to give you a very pertinent example of that, recently I put up a video which was a sort of tour around a local Palmerston fort here in Plymouth, Crown Hill Fort, and it hasn't had a great many views, just over 100 now, so it hasn't been, you know, particularly popular. But when it was about the 80 view mark, a YouTube channel owner called Honesty Son put up a comment, and the comment was just barking mad. I'm going to be talking about mental disorders, and I'll try not to use kind of derogatory terms, but sometimes there's just no avoidance of the use of those kinds of words. It was barking mad, insane. And I'll read you what this chap said, well, chap or woman, I don't know. It said, "Nope, built way before that. It is Tarteian. It is a star fort built for energy. We have been lied in capital letters, to about everything," again in capital letters. "It has nothing to do with wars and battlements. This is all part of the lies and deception." Now, as I say, there were only, by the time this comment went up, my video had only been viewed by about 80 people. It worries me that more than 1% of my audience, potentially, based on that very limited sampling, might hold opinions like that, might be their impression of reality. I mean, for all I know, and I don't know why this particular channel picked up, they're not a subscriber to my own channel, I don't know why they picked up on the subject of Crown Hill Fort in particular, but it's a building that I used to pass on my way to work every day, backwards and forwards to work, so I saw it twice a day at least. If this channel owner lives in Plymouth and does the same, then is effectively living alongside what he regards as being an alien construction. It's just incredible, really, to my mind, that people can hold this view. And the other thing that struck me in particular was this refrain that you get from so many people on so many channels, and in comments on my channels as well, that we have been lied to about everything. What it means is that these kind of comments, they're propagating this impression of the world that everything is one huge deceit, that we've been misled, we've been brainwashed, whatever. It's completely undermining people's conception of reality. And unfortunately, I feel that modern day technology, and in particular the internet, has allowed this kind of mentality to spread and to convince people, and once you begin to undermine people's perceptions of reality, in more gentle ways, then the whole thing can kind of escalate. So it's something that I think we should really, all of us, be conscious of and attempting to counter and correct. And this is one of the reasons why, in particular with the current crisis in the Ukraine, I've been very kind of critical of YouTube channels that have remained silent on this matter. It's not that they're trying to kind of, it's not, well, they're trying to avoid controversy on their own channels, and I totally get that. But the big problem with it is that channels like This Honesty Son witness this complacency almost, and lack of outspokenness on a subject which it's quite right and proper to be outspoken about, and see themselves as kind of swimming in a sea where the vast majority of people hold their own opinions. The reason I kind of connect this guy's nutty beliefs in alien star thoughts and so on with the Ukraine is that phrase about we've been lied to about everything, because there were certain YouTube channels, I won't name them because I don't want to advertise them in any way, but there were certain channels that at the time of Putin's invasion of the Ukraine started saying that we have been fed lies and propaganda, and Putin had a justification in doing his actions. So this whole idea that you can't trust the evidence of your own eyes and ears, and you can't believe information that you're given because everybody is out to deceive you and form your own impression of reality the way they want it to be formed. You know, it absolutely undermines everything. Now, I am a very close observer of the mental state of paranoid schizophrenia. It's something that affected a family member very badly, and I've kind of acquired an experience, as it were, first-hand experience of what that mental state does to people's minds and people's behaviour and to their concept of reality. I've sort of formed the opinion that we are all paranoid to one state or another. If I can give a kind of parallel example, there's lots of people are very open on YouTube about their own mental health, and that always kind of relates, or 99% of the time, it relates to stress and depression, and things that are very common. Stress is actually a universal experience, and it's actually something that is a kind of positive attribute that we all need to experience stress. If we didn't get stressed, it wouldn't provoke reaction. It wouldn't compel us to organise and to plan and to work at a sort of slightly heightened pace and level, and to get things done more efficiently. The problem with stress is that people become overstressed, and then their mental health deteriorates, and depression kicks in, that kind of thing. And a lot of people try and cope, and when they can't cope. And in fact, it's much healthier to admit that things have got on top of you, and to seek help from professionals, perhaps medication and so on. There's a parallel there with paranoia, only it tends to work differently. We all need to be conscious of other people's thoughts and intentions, and what's going on in other people's minds. If we didn't, we wouldn't be able to unite and to work in groups and so on, to work as teams. We need to know what's going on in the brains around us in order to be able to function as part of the crowd. And again, like stress, paranoia can, well, it's not paranoia as such. It's a kind of insight into other people's minds. Paranoia comes about when you incorrectly attribute motivations to people that aren't actually there. So you can mistakenly believe that someone has a hostile intention to you. Sometimes you correctly make that assumption, but sometimes you can become very suspicious of people's completely benign actions and mistake them for being hostile or inimical to you. Now the trouble with that state of mind is that you become, rather than reach out and get help for it, like you might be persuaded to do with stress and depression. Trouble with paranoia is that you become very introspective, and you keep your thoughts to yourself, and you simply begin to behave differently. You tend to kind of avoid contact with those people that you might think have some kind of enmity towards you, or indeed you might even strike out at them in some way, speak very aggressively to them, or in extreme cases be physically violent towards them. And this is one of the frightening things about paranoid schizophrenia, that is that you never really know what a person suffering from it is potentially likely to do. And the other aspect about paranoid schizophrenics is that they are extremely acute at observation and picking up on absolutely everybody's actions, and also almost seeming to have an uncanny sixth sense about what that person might have been doing when they're not within sight of the person who's suffering this mental disorder. A little bit difficult. I haven't explained that very well, but that they've almost got like a a sort of psychic ability to be able to read people's minds, to know what they've been up to, and at the same time, when that comes to scrutiny of themselves, they are very clever at being able to conceal their own condition. So paranoid schizophrenics, unlike people who suffer from depression, who might be quite open to seeking help, paranoid schizophrenics are completely the opposite. They will be suspicious of any intervention to help them, and they will shun it, make it impossible, for someone to try and help them, and be very aware if there's any kind of scrutiny of their what they regard as their private business. So that stretches out not only from avoiding medical care, but it also goes into the authorities' tax inspection, something like that, something that's perfectly normal, that we all live with. But a paranoid schizophrenic will be very keen to avoid any sort of inspection of their income or their accounts, that sort of thing. They want to be completely private, completely self-contained, and not to have any outside interference in their world. So I might as well get on now to the reason why I'm showing you this picture, because another thing that's happened a few times, once was a couple of years ago, but just recently I've overheard it again and commented on the channel, and it was a recommendation for a book written by a chap, you could call him an historian. He's kind of a self-educated historian. I don't believe he's got any academic qualification in history, but he may well have. I might be wrong in that. A chap called Peter Hofstra, who has written fair amount on the Battle of Waterloo, and his chief his main theme, is that the Battle of Waterloo wasn't actually a British victory; it was a German victory, and it's a bit of a kind of an extreme opinion. It sort of undermines everybody's or most people's impression of Waterloo, that it was a British victory, and again it gets into this whole issue of undermining reality, and history forms part of the reality of the present, and to kind of make a statement that Waterloo was a German victory rather than a British one, kind of undermines your entire perspective on politics, history and politics since 1815. Now, that's no bad thing to do that, to look at things again, to reinterpret historical events on the evidence, on the basis of new evidence, and even on the basis of a re-emphasis of certain aspects of a historical account. So I'm not criticising that in any way, but the problem with Peter Hofstra was that he had a very extreme and opinionated interpretation of what actually happened at Waterloo. It wasn't only that he claimed it was German victory because without the Prussians arriving on the battlefield in the afternoon, Wellington would have been defeated. It was also the fact that the majority of Wellington's army, as he claimed, were either German auxiliaries or German soldiers who were part of the British Army, such as the King's German Legion, or they were Germanic kind of allies, such as the Dutch, who had a sort of racial links to the Germans, and indeed the Anglo-Saxon. You know, if you take the Anglo-Saxon element of the British race, then that goes back to a kind of Germanic route as well. So he really took this to extremes, and unfortunately as well, when other historians did try to counterbalance his argument, shall we say, he reacted to it extremely. So he was actually demonstrating some aspects, albeit quite mild at the time, of paranoid schizophrenia. And indeed it turned out later on in years, as years went by, that his mental disorder exhibited itself more and more kind of blatantly. And I don't know the exact, I can't remember the exact story itself, but he had some kind of rift with other family members, and at one stage the police became involved and searched his PC or his laptop and found a lot of indecent images of children on it, and he was prosecuted for possession of these indecent images, and his arguments in his defence in court were as insane as Honesty Son's remarks on my video were. That, you know, he claimed that the critics, he claimed other family members had put the images there at first, and then he also began to rope in his critics on his historical works and say that they were trying to undermine his arguments by putting these images on his computer somehow. It was all completely erroneous, and he was found guilty, and I think he spent five years maybe in prison. After he was in prison, although he was born in London, South London, I believe. I actually had a sort of passing acquaintance with him because he was a member of the South London Warlords. But anyway, after he was released from prison, the Home Office wanted to deport him to Austria because I think he had joint Austrian nationality, because I think his parents were Austrian, I believe, and he was in fact finally, after fighting deportation for quite some time, he was actually finally deported to Austria, where the whole thing began again, and the Austrian police also found fresh indecent images on his computer, and they also, more worryingly, found him guilty of firearms offences. And this is what I was trying to say earlier about the disturbing nature of paranoid schizophrenia. that he was demonstrating relatively restrained reactions to people around him, but there is a very fast and easy connection between that and between actually being violent towards other people, dangerously so. And it's usually only when paranoid schizophrenics become a danger to others that here in the UK the NHS are able to step in and take action by sectioning people and so on. That's really kind of regrettable, because paranoid schizophrenia ruins people's lives, and it ruins the lives of their family members and so on. And there is absolutely there is a great reluctance here in the UK to step in and intervene with people who are displaying symptoms that are just harmful to themselves, not in a physical way, but in a personal way, in terms of the life that they're living, the very kind of introspective, secluded and diminished life that they're living. There's no attempt to kind of try and help with that. They'll only step in and try and help if that mental disorder begins to impinge or threaten other people. But anyway, in Peter Hofstra's case, he was detained, sectioned in Austria in a mental hospital there, and to the best of my knowledge, he's still in that hospital because he was, as I say, refusing medication and so on, refusing to be helped. And you can't you can't sort of physically assault someone by medicating them against their will. So as far as I know, that's still the situation with him, and the medical authorities in Austria are at an impasse. But anyway, to get back to this print, I actually bought this print from a business that was being run by Peter Hofstra. He was importing, at the time it was, pre the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain and so on, and he was importing Napoleonic prints and so on from somewhere in Eastern Europe. I thought it was East Germany. I might be wrong in that. It might have been Austria, which was in a kind of limbo, sort of neutral state, as it were. But I got the impression at the time that they came from East Prussia, not East Prussia, East Germany, and they were all kind of slightly kind of below par prints. I mean, if you've been looking at this print while I've been talking, you'll notice there's sort of patches of it that haven't been filled with colour and so on. So it's something that's sort of slightly substandard, but nevertheless, I've always liked this print, especially since I got it framed. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that the internet hasn't really helped the condition of people that are suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, and the main reason for that really is that it allows a person who wants to be left to their own devices to kind of hide in plain sight of other people. So, for instance, Honesty's son, who is inhabiting this world of his own or her own, on YouTube hasn't given their real name. This is another reason why I've always used my actual name. I think you have to be completely open about your own identity on YouTube, and again, I can understand why people have titles and so on for their channel rather than their own name, but I think it's far more healthy to actually give your own name, not to give away masses of your own personal data and information, but I think a name is more, it's more, I trust people far more if they supply their name rather than supply some kind of weird title to their channel. But anyway, there he is, Honestly Son, is existing in this world of his own, and yet he's able to kind of interact with the outside world, or so he kind of believes. But it's very much a world that is shaped in his own eyes. He's not attempting to acquire fresh information, fresh kind of experiences. What he's doing is actually interpreting everything in his own kind of disordered view. Yeah, and that as well is something that I think the internet, not just YouTube, but the internet, just allows people to do. It doesn't give them a true and accurate depiction of the world. It just reinforces their own delusions. Now, the same thing can kind of apply to people who are perfectly have a perfectly healthy mental state. I frequently kind of observe YouTube channels talking about, for instance, their subscription levels, talking about not understanding why someone has disliked their video and so on. What those people are doing is actually assuming that all their interactions with the internet are genuine interfaces with real people. I'm convinced, and maybe I'm being deluded in my own right, but I don't think I am. I'm convinced that a large proportion of activity on, if we just take YouTube and disregard everything else like Facebook, a large amount of activity on YouTube is generated by artificial intelligence and by bots and so on, and doesn't, behind that channel, so again, it's getting back to the fact that you can hide behind kind of names on a channel. A lot of that activity is not genuine. It's artificial. It might in the long term be traced. I mean, obviously, some kind of human agency had to create the channel in the first place, but it might be one person or one government agency, shall we say. I don't want to sort of stray in too much into the realms of paranoid delusion myself, but if you took someone like Russia, which has done so much to undermine people's faith in reality over the years, and has also quite noticeably now been you know, seem to have intervened in the American elections, for instance, in 2016, and also sown the seeds of doubt and mistrust over the Ukraine invasion. So for years before that, constantly planting doubts into people's minds. But it's quite easy for a Russian agency, for instance, to create hundreds of thousands of fake YouTube accounts, and then just sort of using trigger words and so on, find channels that it might be worth dropping comments into, or even subscribing to, and it gives that channel that they've created a kind of false profile. The fact that it's there and it's kind of behaving in a sort of semi-human way, so it can't be distinguished from a deliberate kind of fake account. And I'm a firm believer that not only my channel but everyone else's channels, I would say probably a good 10% of my subscriptions don't relate to real people with a real interest in my channel. And the other thing with the dislikes, I often think that it's I won't say his name, but a very prominent an active kind of participant in the YouTube community, the wargaming community, made some comment on one of their videos recently about how they were putting up sort of hour-long videos. Their content was on average about half an hour to an hour long. He made this remark that within a minute or 2 minutes of his content going up, he usually got a dislike. So the person hadn't even watched the content; they had just automatically disliked it. Now, I made the remark to him that person would have to be psychotic, if it was a real person, to be sitting, to have subscribed to their channel when they routinely disliked his content, and then to sit waiting for the content to go up so that you could dislike it within a minute of it having gone up. That just isn't the behaviour of anyone other than an insane person or a robotic kind of artificial intelligence that wasn't a genuine person. So that kind of dislike, fair enough that people can not agree with what you're saying, or really dislike your content and give it a thumbs down. But I think the majority of dislikes come from robotic kind of intelligence as well. But what that artificial behaviour is doing is triggering paranoid states of mind in people who would otherwise be perfectly healthy. So to sit worrying about the dislikes on your channel is actually the beginning of a kind of niggling interference with your own mental state and mental health of mind. You have to kind of brush off dislikes and so on, and and just water off a duck's back, and tell yourself that the majority of the time they're not genuine dislikes, they're just automatic automatic dislikes. What was I going to say? Sorry, this is the trouble with it, because my thoughts aren't sort of pursuing a kind of linear process, as I say. So there are other things that I want to say, but I have to kind of hold back on saying them until I've got the previous sentence out. By the time I got the previous sentence out, the thoughts kind of left my mind again. Yeah, no, there was a long gap there. I'll have to edit that out, so you won't have noticed it, but that thought has completely escaped me. So I'm going to now kind of describe my own attitude towards smartphones, which is, a really kind of contentious issue with me. I cannot bear smartphones. I can barely tolerate old-fashioned mobile phones. I first acquired a mobile phone when something happened, that an emergency happened out in the streets, gone midnight, and if I hadn't been near a telephone box, I wouldn't have been able to lend assistance to someone who was badly in need of an ambulance, and in fact subsequently he died. But so after that happened, I thought I should really have a mobile phone just for emergencies like that. But I've never ever really seen the need for a mobile phone. I'm very kind of antiquated in my thoughts like that. But smartphones are, the devil's own work in my opinion, and that is because they allow access to the internet wherever you are and wherever you go. And I'm kind of appealing really to restraint in the use of the internet, and to to a kind of if you are going to use the internet, then try and adopt a different attitude to what you're fed on it. Try and be aware of your own mental state of mind. So with mobile phones, I sort of have one if I'm away from my home and I need to get in contact with someone. And why do you need to get in contact with people? We manage perfectly well without the need to communicate by phone for for millennia. Why is it suddenly so important? It's kind of but occasionally you might need to say phone for a taxi or something like that. Something that you could have done from a phone box in past years, but now phone boxes are disappearing. Trying to think of other reasons why you might need a phone. I just can't think of one. But that's what I tended to use it for anyway. If I am away from my own home. But smartphones, I kind of really resent the increasing pressure on people to own one. So to give you a few examples, when I do go away, the particular hotel chain that I usually book hotel rooms with, they require a mobile phone number. So I'm fine with that at the moment, because the primitive device I've got can receive text messages, and I think that's all they need them for. So I don't need a smartphone, and they seem to be happy with my mobile phone number, but I simply don't understand why they won't take my landline phone number. It's the it's the thin end of the wedge, really, that it's beginning to require the ownership of a piece of technology. That there are people who just don't want to have even a mobile phone, and why oblige them to have one simply in order to be able to travel around the country, move around the country. So the next example I would give you is when you have a bank account, if you want to do online banking, again, you have to supply a mobile phone number, not a landline. And that again is to do with the additional checks that are now made and safeguards to allow the bank to be sure that you're a genuine customer, and they will, occasionally, if you're doing online banking, before you can log in, they will send you a code through a text message. And the same with the use of cards online, that if you want to make payments and transfers, if it's to a new person, then they will send you a coded they will send you a code, and you have to put that in, and you can only do that really if you're able to receive text messages on a mobile phone. So again, it's sort of fair enough, but it is kind of beginning to exclude people, elderly people in particular, who might be perfectly, capable of using a laptop and using online banking, but don't see the need to have a mobile phone. It's gone one step on from that now, that if you want to open a new bank account, in the past they had, or the bank that I bank with anyway, if you didn't have a mobile phone, they had a sort of dummy code that they could put in to those particular boxes when you applied to open a new account, and it would bypass that need to actually have a mobile phone. But they no longer recognise that right not to have a mobile phone. Now you have to put in a genuine number of a phone that you have in order to open a bank account. So now you're talking about, if you're a young person, just sort of came of age, for instance, so you're an adult and you're able to own your own bank account and do your own banking and move around the country and book hotels, you can't exist unless you have a mobile phone. It's not a matter of being able to choose. You cannot be an adult in this country unless you're completely removed from from society, and you just can't go about normal kind of everyday aspects of life unless you own a mobile phone. Just recently, this is another reason why there's not only that comment on my Crown Hill Fort video, but another incident that's happened to me just recently is that I'm due to go and see a performance at my local theatre this coming weekend, and it was a performance that had been delayed almost 2 years because of COVID, and I had tickets originally for it, but now the theatre don't sell hard copy tickets, so I actually had to go into the theatre, and the box office is now permanently closed, and explain to the staff there that I didn't have a smartphone and I wasn't able to get these tickets on, on a device that I could show them, and they then printed me tickets which look exactly like the tickets I already owned, but they're actually in my hand, they're hard copy. But since then I've had an email from them just explaining about the ticketing process in readiness for the performance coming up this weekend, and they've actually gone one step further than that now. They no longer issue physical tickets. So I just want to read out, it's a bit elongated this, but I just wanted to read out their new protocols for selling tickets for any performance in their theatre. It says, your tickets, we no longer issue physical tickets. All tickets are now issued electronically. Your tickets for this and all your forthcoming events are available to view in the upcoming events section of your online account. This is the easiest and fastest way for you to access your tickets from now on! Exclamation mark. You can now access your account in two ways. Via our website, simply click the button below to log into your account and view your tickets. I found that problematic actually, by the way, because I didn't have an account with them. Please log in and show these e-tickets to our front of house team on arrival on a digital device. So in other words, you need to take a smartphone or an iPad or a laptop if you go to that extreme, but it's basically aimed at persuading people to have a smartphone, not a mobile phone, a smartphone. Depending on your booking date, you may also have received a copy of these e-tickets via email. These electronic tickets are not suitable for printing. So even though I've got a laptop that I can leave at home, I could open an account with them. I could go in and see my e-tickets, but I can't print them off. So I would have to take my laptop in, because I don't own a smartphone, to the theatre. I'm not going to do that. The second way of accessing your account is via the Theatre Royal Plymouth app. So there you are. I've given away the name of the theatre, but I think they deserve to be shamed. So they have an app, and you can access your digital tickets at the touch of a finger with our brand new TRP app. Simply log in and go to my account, my tickets, view your order history, find out what's on, send tickets to a friend, and book for more amazing shows. Completely useless to me, and I'm simply not going to buy a smartphone. So this is going to be the last time that I'll ever be able to go and see a performance at the Theatre Royal. So this is another restriction on my freedom, really, on my ability to be able to behave as a normal member of society. I can't now go to my local theatre. I'm wondering now whether a similar thing is going to happen at my local cinema. The last time I went to the cinema, I bought the tickets online and printed them out. So their tickets it was possible to get a printout of what I think they call them QRFs, and I could just show that to the staff at the cinema, and they allowed me in. But the thing I wanted to say about this, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that during COVID there were a lot of restrictions on what some people thought was their freedom of movement and so on, and rights and such like, and I was all for that. And in particular, I would have gone a lot further. I would have suggested far greater use of COVID passports and so on, proof of vaccination, proof of immunity, and then only allowed people to access to communal events, and even I would have gone as far as allowing access to shops and so on. People kicked up against that. They didn't want that, and I'm a firm proponent of national identity cards. That has long since gone by the by. People regard that as a infringement on their liberties and their freedom, to be private and so on. And yet, they'll quite happily, subscribe to smartphones, and they're actually paying private companies to carry around with them what is effectively becoming an electronic identity card. Why not just have an identity card and have the state run it, rather than having private enterprises with access to huge amounts of your personal data, far more than you'd actually give to the state if you were to have a national identity card. They know your movements. Someone who, there's people who run smartphone businesses, they know your movements, they know your habits, they know your preferences in terms of what you spend, where you socialise, who you chat to, all kinds of things. They've got far greater handle on your identity than the state does, if it was going to issue you a national identity card. And it just makes no sense to me whatsoever. But at the same time, it's kind of disturbed. We're becoming a kind of potentially dystopia, where we're giving away all the kind of elements of our own privacy that a paranoid schizophrenic person is absolutely dead set against doing. They want to be completely hidden from view, and yet be able to interact with society in their own distorted and kind of deluded fashion. So the other thing I wanted to say was just to talk a little bit about, go back to the wall there and that print, because one of the things I've long wanted to do, and it's been I've been in two minds about doing it, is that is to purchase a copy of a particular painting that I am very, very fond of. It's a painting called, people normally know it as Pegwell Bay, but it's actually, the full title of the painting is Pegwell Bay, a recollection of October the 5th, 1858, and it's by a pre-Raphaelite painter called William Dyce. And as I say, I've been looking at that wall and thinking, shall I get a copy of this, a print of this painting, and put it up on my wall? In general, I don't think that art of that nature is appropriate for decorating someone's wall or someone's house. It disturbs me a little bit that, or worries me, that Tate Britain, where the painting is, actually sell a lot of you can get prints of lots of their collection, and there's even an app that allows you to put in the colour of your wallpaper or whatever, the colour of your background decor, to see how the painting would match, you know. So it's really kind of demeaning to the artist and the art, I think, to do that. But at the same time, this particular painting, I always get lost in it when I look at it. I frequently, if I'm in London, I'll make a deliberate trip to the Tate Britain, just go to this one painting and look at it and just get lost in it. It has so much in it. But one of the things that I think is very kind of pertinent to this conversation I'm having with you now is that it speaks to me volumes about that particular period in history, and I won't go into. I might if I do get this print, I might do a separate video on it. But in the 1850s, obviously technology was advancing dramatically, just as it is nowadays with my railing against the use of smartphones and so on. But one of the principal things that had changed or was changing was the kind of evolution of photography, and the pre-Raphaelite movement in general, to some extent, some degree, was a reaction to photographic techniques and to how they were actually subtly changing the way that we observe the world and our own impressions of reality. That you could see photographs of places that you were never going to go to and get a kind of an opinion of them, form an impression of them. And the pre-Raphaelites, kind of, their paintings, if you were to look closely at the detail in this painting, for instance, you would see it's painted in the most minute of detail, and it's about as close as you can get to photographic reality as is possible, and yet at the same time it isn't a photograph, and it's not actually showing you what Pegwell Bay looks like exactly. It's just giving you, Pegwell Bay doesn't actually look like that, didn't actually look like that on October the 5th, 1858, but it looks something like that. So all other kinds of things, all other sort of subjects going on at the time, Darwinism, the geology advancing and being able to demonstrate that the world was far older than was previously believed from the sources such as the Bible and so on. So people's kind of understanding of what was real was being completely undermined. The universe was much bigger than previously believed, and the world was much older than previously believed, and there were all kinds of techniques such as photography coming in that allowed people to see the world in a completely different way. So it's very much a kind of topical subject that this artist is trying to discuss in the painting, and it's another reason why I like it so much. I just read so much into this painting every time I look at it. So I think I will get a version of it and put it on my wall, just so I can stare at it and let my mind wander, rather than use it as a kind of way of decorating my wall. It's going to be a kind of portal through which my mind can travel. Yeah, but sorry, one other thing that I forgot to say earlier about how people are viewing the world differently because of their ownership of smartphones is, of course, that they're not viewing the world at all now. I get so frustrated, when I'm out and about, by seeing the number of people who are on their phones the whole time, not looking around them, not seeing anything, being completely absorbed in their own private worlds, just not being aware. So they're not looking where they're going, they're not looking around them, they're not seeing what's happening, they're not seeing other people, they're not sort of interacting with their surroundings in any way. And I think that is a very damaging long term. It's going to have very damaging long term effects on people's mental health. Is that people are more and more people are going to become paranoid schizophrenics, I think, simply because they're not absorbing anything from their surroundings other than what they want to kind of control themselves. So they're chatting online with their friends as they go along the road, or they're connecting with sites to do with their own very specific beliefs and interests, and they're not actually seeing the world, as it is there. And I think in a way that is what William Dyce, the painter of Pegwell Bay, was trying to say back in those days about the beginnings of this kind of broader community of people who had access to photographic illustrations and so on in books and newspapers and publications and so on. Just be aware, just be present in the world, and don't exist in your own bubble, as it were. And lots more that I would have, I needed to say it, and it's left me completely. But an appeal really to people to be aware of your own and other people's mental disorders, as well as their mental health. We all have mentality, but it's not always healthy. And modern life, modern technology, and the internet, I think, are all damaging to our mentality, both as individuals and collectively. And this is one of the reasons why Putin and the Russians have so easily seemed to slip into this collective insanity of the invasion of the Ukraine. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for listening if you've got this far, and see you on another video. Bye for now.